Listen up and I'll tell a story about an artist growing old. Some would try for fame and glory, others aren't so bold.
Welcome to Winging It. We're in Canada today, Charlie, is that right?
Yes, it's our third Zoom episode, webisode, I guess you could call it. And today we're going to Sault Ste. Marie. Yeah, we're going to check in with Casey McGlynn.
Another spot on the map that's a little too far to drive to, so
yeah. Oh, and look, I see that Casey's in the waiting room, in the green room. Okay. So let's admit him. Right on.
I'm really not a tech guy. Like,
it's all right. We'll walk you through it. Welcome to Winging It.
Yeah, welcome.
Hi, nice to see you.
And this is Mark. And
hey, Casey.
To point out, I got the poster behind me here.
Yeah, it looks good.
It does. And the prints up in the kitchen. So
awesome.
Right on. So so this is our third Zoom episode, and we went to Mexico City and New York City, and now we're going to the metropolis of Sault Ste. Marie. How's it going up there?
Yeah. What's that?
How's it going up there?
It's good. It's pretty different lifestyle from Toronto.
Yeah.
I mean, I had kind of moved out of the art scene a little bit with having kids. Yeah. And so it had been years since I'd gone out. And so it's kind of like I lived up north already, even though I lived in the Junction. And so it's just like, you got to get out of here. I realized, like, we're wasting. We don't need to live in this prime real estate.
Absolutely.
What is the art community like in the Soo?
I don't know yet. There is one, like, sort of artist-run center, I think.
Okay.
And it's
right.
Yeah, I
forget. As a part of like the parallel gallery system that's been around forever and gets a bit of funding.
Up here you get more of the wood carvings.
Oh, okay, yeah.
we all sell it at the side of the road stuff.
Yeah.
Which I like too.
Yeah. So in a way, you're just you have no competition up there.
Yeah, I mean, I ship everything, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I am going to show up here eventually, but I think I'll, just to like fit in, I'll probably like do really small things and make my stuff super duper, just normal price like everyone else's.
Right, of course. Yeah. It's hard. You couldn't
like a one-time show.
Right.
In Sault Ste. Marie, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Just so I don't be like, I'm not going to show with all the locals and be like, hey, these are $10,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
And you have, I mean, that's what your work fetches in the market. So it's like you say, like smaller. I've seen you've done some of your cutouts of some of your figures. Were you showing those out in Alberta?
Remember
in the summer?
The Gary Matheson Gallery.
Yeah. Is that's the one? Is that in Edmonton?
Yeah.
I saw your work. I was my partner grew up in Edmonton, so we were there one year and went to the gallery and said, "Hey, that's Casey's work."
Oh, cool.
It really jumps off the wall, right?
Because
a lot of the other stuff there is a little video. Anyway, don't want to disparage anyone. It's just different, right? It's very lively. Your work is very lively. So I just want to maybe start off by saying, like, the thing that strikes me about your work is that it is lively, it's colorful, it's playful, it's it really
very
diverse, yeah. It jumps off the wall at you, right? It has I know that you're a fan of so-called outsider art, and we both share an appreciation for Jonathan Mies.
Yeah.
Kind of unbound creative energy. So,
you
want to talk about that?
Well, I was just thinking about him actually, because I was sort of scanning my books, and there's a great video of him where he's doing a performance where he just goes kind of crazy and he paints like for I think 48 hours or something.
Okay.
And he gets one of his buddies in there, and they do a weird performance with masks and stuff on. And anyways, his energy and his whole attitude sort of like made me kind of figure out in a way what my philosophy around art is, because I mean, I had always worked for years and years at this rampant pace where part of the energy of what I do is in the work, and like part of it has to be quick. And so to do that and to be productive, I work like all the time. And so I sort of identified with him with this attitude of like, art has to be free. And it's like, it's about being free. It's like, why would you not do it? Is the real question. Exactly. You know, and that's sort of like my favorite sort of way of coming at something is like, and then now I'm really loose with it, where it's like, I trust myself intuitively. So I'll look at a drawing and I'll say, oh, that just needs red, like a couple hits of red.
Yeah.
And then I'll just do that, you know, but like with a lot of, you know, energy and quickness, but it comes in a real sort of methodical way where like the painting has been sitting there for 3 days and I'm passing by it. Yeah. And then I realize, oh, it needs this. Yeah. And so there's a mixture of like this kind of panic frenzy of creativity to get the images down.
Yeah.
Because I always want the images to come out without me any kind of intellectualizing of any sort. And I want it just to dump out. Yeah. And I want it to be interpreted, not by me even, like interpreted whenever. I don't even care. Like that's my attitude.
Yeah, you don't even care about that. It reminds me of improvised music, right? That idea that you do all the work up front in terms of getting skill, then you trust that in the moment it's going to do the right thing.
Yeah, and you go in there and it's almost like a sound recording, you know, and that you're laying down this quick thing that's like as quickly as you can scan it. It's like, you know, it was created maybe 10 times that. You know what I mean? And that's sort of like the energy I always want to capture, or at least the
your work.
Go ahead,
Ben. I was just going to say your work just strikes me as such a beautiful balance of the spontaneity that you're talking about, that spontaneous energy, and yet the compositions are just so right and so perfect. It's a real sense of composition of everything is in its right place.
Why do you only do that only? Why are you so odd? We don't really like what you do. We don't think anyone ever will. It's a problem that you have, and this problem's made you ill. Listen up and I'll tell a story about an artist growing old.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you though, do you ever, because you're talking so much about how it's very spontaneous, it's almost a frenzy, do you ever get stuck? Do you ever like in the process, or you're working on a series, say, and you're just suddenly stuck? Like, I don't know where to go from here. Does that ever happen?
More I'll just overdo things. And where I'll be like, I should have stopped.
Right.
And when I used to paint with studio mates, they'd be like, oh yeah, you wrecked it. And they'd come in and they'd be really funny about it. And they'd be like, yeah, you should have stopped, you wrecked it.
Yeah.
And you know, it's sort of like, that's my problem. Instead of the problem of not having anything to do, it's like my hands get too busy and then I have to be able to, it's almost better if someone's in the room to say, that's good that way. You're going to ruin it if you keep going.
Don't add anything else.
Go through it. Yeah.
Yeah, but, I feel that way. I feel that way sometimes too, right? Like just the work goes too far, right? One too many horses or whatever, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I've done that with Charlie's paintings on a couple of occasions. I've been that extra person, and I would say, you've got to keep that part there. You have to keep it. And of course, you know, a week later, it's gone.
Yeah. For me, I think for me, I take too many things out. I think.
You take things out, you edit.
Oh my God. I will paint over the whole painting and then.
Yeah. I do a little, like I do like maybe, I would say a third I will take out. Once it's all full, I'll take out a third and then I'll sort of work little details in, because I have this really fear of empty space like that.
Sure, yeah.
From Mexican folk art. There's a word for it, I forget.
Horror vacui.
Yeah, like I literally have it. Like I want to feel like I'll look at things and just go, oh, stuff has got to be put in these spots. Why wouldn't it be? It's empty. And it actually took working with Clint Griffin for years and years. He's like a master of leaving empty space, you know. His work was like he would have a tiny figure here and then this whole open painting and a couple things here, and you'd just be like, how does he balance it with just 3 things? And like he was my studio mate right across the wall from me for, you know, more than a decade. And so it kind of like, when me being obsessed about filling space and he's kind of obsessed about leaving space, I learned so much from that. And it was just like, oh, okay, yeah, I get what he's doing over there. He's leaving all these spaces where you don't need to fill. And
empty space,
you know, I can honestly say I didn't know it until I worked with him, because I was, you know, and to me, when I see those elements of my work, I'm like, oh yeah, there's those early Clint paintings, you know, like even these squares. And it's just like we're all have influences, and I have tons of them.
I was looking at
like he was a big one because we were studio mates for so long.
I was looking at a bunch of I was looking at a bunch of your work today, and there seems to be like those 2 phases. There's the ones that are like a field with horses and it has the empty space. Like it's active empty space, and then there's the ones that are, you know, much they have more stuff in it, they're more populated, and I certainly relate to that. I like to I think of it as like to be generous. I'd like to you know, I don't want when I go to see art, I don't want to be ripped off. In that, you know, and I don't want to rip people off. So I'm sort of like you in that I like
no minimalism here, folks. No minimalism.
I want to add more, you know, more value. I wanted to go back to something that Marc said about your compositions, because I've been looking at a lot of your work lately, and I wanted to touch on this the idea of outsider art. And it seems to me, and I know you have a love of that as I do, and you know, there's sort of an overlap. I can see that in your work, but your compositions are really sophisticated, the way like an abstract expressionist would work.
Very much so.
You know, like there's exquisite balance that not always found in the more outsider art. So I know.
Well, I mean, when I first started, the course I was in was abstract expressionism with, I think Dot Tour was the teacher at OCA, and it was like a critical course. It was the only critical course I took in all my years of OCA that was like a class where you had to listen to lectures. And so, and he's amazing. And so I had this like total knowledge of, you know, from Yves Klein to Rauschenberg and de Kooning and all the whole arc of all that movement. But that was it. Like literally I knew, like I used to joke that I would say, I still don't even know I would say Van Gogh, isn't he the guy with the blue period? And is that, and I still don't know, is Picasso has a blue period?
That's Picasso.
But I used to say Van Gogh had a blue period too. Like I didn't know. Like I grew up in Townsendburg. Like my art education was really limited, and then so anyways,
most of your courses were studio courses then, right? Like learning to, you know, get your hands dirty and paint and
so I had this knowledge, and I also had a friend, Brett Coles, who was like sat right next to me in the class, and he was like knew all the abstract expressionists, knew all about it, and was kind of like, oh, you see, you're doing sort of like this, and you're you know, sort of hinting at where I was going and giving me advice. And so all that whole era, like Adolf Gottlieb was actually where he sort of pointed me in the beginning. And I was like really got into the pictograph series. That, I mean, that little bit of art education really went a long way when I just sort of applied my own thing, because and also being obsessed with comic books for decades. And
okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was really a comic book thing too, with my composition. And like Kirby, I feel, is like one of the most underrated influencers on contemporary art.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Like Jack Kirby, the comic book artist.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, if you look at so many contemporary artists, he influenced so many of them. And it's like, you know, his work should be shown in that world. It should be shown, you know, at the Met and at the whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think
especially artists who draw like Raymond Pettibon and.
Yeah, it's total connection there.
Arrow from Iceland. Many of the pop artists, but also you know, realist artists. Realist artists work in that style, or quote him directly, and quote him and other comic artists, graphic novelists.
I'm wondering, if you can talk about some of your other influences, like who jumps out, who's the.
Well, it's not hard for me because it was very few in the beginning, because when I started this horse series, it was like one day in 1995, I guess, where I literally remember kind of looking at my roommate's art on the walls at 842 Dover Court Road and being like, they're working with this material, they're working with that. And I kind of sort of borrowed a little bit of everybody's materials, just enough that it wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't notice.
Right.
And then I started drawing, and like I did this a couple of days earlier. There was this big cat fight in front of my house. Like two cats had this brawl. My cat, Benny, and this other neighborhood cat. And it was such a memorable event that I drew the cat fight. So I was looking at that picture, and I was drawing this new picture, and I sort of started to like scribble into the white with black underneath, like you do when you have spaghetti on your plate.
Right.
You have sauce, and you just sort of draw it in the sauce. You know what I mean? When the spaghetti is on.
Yeah.
And you can make a picture in that. And so this is my first time really doing that, like sort of like the scratching away and revealing something. And that was part of me sort of discovering a whole new level of art. And so that moment, I also drew this sheep. I drew this animal form, and it was eating out of this red bowl. And like in that moment, the two things, like the alchemy happened, where I was like, oh, I have a subject that I'm painting, and the subject makes the way I'm painting look like art finally. Like, because I was always doing this messy, shitty painting that everybody was like, oh, that's good, Casey, but you know, I don't think you're going to get a career at that. And like, I even went to an art school after high school where like they told me, like, what do your parents do? Because you're not going to make it as you got to figure out what they're into and see if they can get you in the factory. And that's what I did. Like, I tried to work in factories for a few years, and I worked at Pizza Hut for 5 years full time, just because of these teachers who directed me, because my sloppiness, they couldn't see it. They were from the 50s, you know what I mean? And they had this 50s attitude of industrial design, slick and tight.
Very classical idea.
It was new to them. It was literally like, this is a new form to me. I don't recognize this. And so they were like, this is shit. And they shot me down. And so I went down for a couple of years. And then when I came back at OCA, I was a full formed artist already. As soon as I found my subject, I had the technique. I had everything. I had years of painting. I had painted on cars, painted on t-shirts, painted on people's arms, done tattoos, done everything. You know, but now I finally had the subject that made it look like fine art. And that was like when I was like, oh, I'm going to sell this shit. Within a month of that first painting, I think I had sold, you know, like 5 or 6 little paintings to my teachers.
Right.
And that was the beginning, you know, like selling to the teachers.
Don't be sad, I know you will. But don't give up until true love will find you in the end. is a promise with a catch. Only if you're looking can it find you. 'Cause true love is searching too. But how can it recognize you unless you step out into the light, the light? Don't be sad, I know you will. But don't give up until true love will find you.
And when I did that, I was sort of like, oh, wait a second. This is a job? Like,
yeah.
I was at OCA to get the OSAP loan.
Right,
you know, I was
right.
I was there to get the free money so I could play in my band. I was in a rock band.
Yeah.
You know, like a post-punk, crazy, weird band.
Yeah,
and also, I was also straight edge. Like, I was like, didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't do drugs.
Right.
I was like 25 years old, so I was like, I was sharp, Now, as you can see,
yeah. Yeah, awesome, yeah.
So your the pictographic quality of your work, which you mentioned Gottlieb as one of the influences.
Yeah.
The different images in those pictographs or in those paintings, they have this sort of symbolic quality to them.
Yeah.
Are they? I mean, are they coming from something personal in your life, or are they supposed to represent some kind of larger ideas? Is it a balance of the two? Could you talk us a little bit about maybe the symbolism in those works?
In Gottlieb's work?
No, in your work.
Your work. Yeah. You seem to have a lexicon of images. You have like your own alphabet or symbolism.
Yeah, lexicon's a good word because I'm working on a beginnings of a book with the publisher, and he suggested, we should have a lexicon for your imagery, so you can sort of like dissect for people. And I was like, that's a great idea. Like, and exactly that's how I see it, is like each image as it's formed comes out of my life, and like I don't even sometimes know who the characters are. The characters themselves tell me, hey, you're painting me, buddy. Sometimes like they're like, hey, that's me. I figured it out, and I don't even know it, and they're right. When I look back on it, I'm like, holy shit, you were right. It's like
your brain and your hand made a choice.
Yeah, and
or your like through your heart or whatever.
Yeah. And like I don't have time to figure that shit out. I have to emote. I have to create. Like I don't have time to figure out what am I gonna paint, where's it gonna come from. I don't have time to grab the color. You know what I mean? Like it's
it
just
rushes
this hand
out.
wants to move constantly. And like it's like a fire, and so
you're very prolific. You're very prolific.
Well, I mean, it's different because that's why I identify so much with outsider art, because I see it, the numbers is like good. I'm like, I want to make thousands and thousands and thousands. And most art dealers are like, no, that's not how you do it. And I'm like, fuck that. Like, I want to create all the time, and I don't want to think about what I'm creating. I want to put out lots of stuff that is shitty. Like, I want to put out lots of stuff that is like a mess and garbage. And like that garbage is good. You have to figure out what's good in it. You know what I mean? There's little bits of good. But like every artist puts out like 30 pieces of shit for one little bit of gold. And so I'm just admitting it and showing everybody all the shit. You know what I mean?
Well, you're showing the outtakes, right? It's like, I think.
Exactly.
Like I was looking at a series today, and they had a lot of similar elements, but they were like different takes of the same kind of amalgam of ideas, and it's so awesome, right? So awesome. I love that, the variations. I was gonna ask
are you still developing characters as you're going, or are you relying on older characters and older symbols that you use?
No, they're always developing, because it's just like, now I've moved to Sault Ste. Marie, so there's going to be there's these sort of like weird people I bump into up here, and there's already a couple. And so,
when did you move there? When did you move to the Sioux?
It's been a year now. So actually, a year and a half almost.
Really, eh?
And so how do you find was there a period of adjustment, or did you feel like you just fit right in as soon as you got there?
Well, I mean, I kind of grew up in Tellsonburg, Ontario, so I know kind of
familiar with it.
Small town life and
rural, yeah.
So when I'm at the convenience store, like I talk almost different. Like I'm like,
yeah,
I'm like, hey, there's a milk. That's it. That's all I want.
The local.
Can I have a cup of coffee, please? Yeah. Like I talk like a totally different person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like less dynamic, less. Just because it's just like if I talk normal, everyone would be like, "Who's this fucking
crazy
I mean?
Guy from Toronto?"
Yeah,
artist from Toronto.
Yeah,
I wanted to. So there are familiar images in your work, but there's also a real raw honesty. I was just looking at your series about, heavy people that influence you, and it's like, nobody talks about that, right? Like, it's amazing that there's like an honesty with your personal work.
Well, yeah, I mean,
influences and.
I came into that kind of thing by accident, where it was like, a photographer asked me to do these photos. He was just hanging out with me, taking my pictures and stuff, because I was painting all the time, and I was sort of like a bit of a notoriety down in Queen West or whatever. And like, who's this guy who's always painting, and that's all he does, And so he would come and take my pictures on Saturdays and buy me breakfast and all my friends' breakfast.
Right.
And so one day he's like, "Hey, I want to take pictures of you naked." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure." I'm like, "What's up with that?" But I was sort of like, I'm real confident, you know what I mean? So I was like, "Yeah, okay, sure, man."
Right on,
And what's your idea? And he's sort of like, he was like, "Well, kind of like the Keith Haring thing." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I didn't even know who fucking Keith Haring was." Like that's how primitive my mind was. I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, Keith Haring, that sounds good." But he meant like the thing with stuff shoved in his mouth, and so I totally went along with it. That's when I had this idea of, well, I'm gonna get naked, I'm gonna draw on myself.
I've seen those photos. Were they
and I was doing this. I was for Catherine Mulhern's.
Right.
One of the early shows at Bus Gallery.
Okay.
And he gave me this idea to photograph me nude. I was like, wow, I'm gonna make myself more interesting. So it went along with the idea of 235 ideas for tattoos, which is my show. In like 90, I don't even know, the 90s, early. And it doing that image of me sort of like looking super confident and like being like Mr. Tough Guy and like being naked, like I had my junk covered by, I had like a mason jar over my private, so it was kind of you couldn't make it out. And so I was like not fully naked, but a big body naked. And then putting that out as my art invite, we made like 5,000 of those things. You know what I mean? And we put them all over Toronto. And that's sort of like you're kind of saying something by doing that.
It's a bold move for sure.
Yeah, and I didn't know even at the time. I was sort of just like, yeah, that looked cool. Oh, I'm a little embarrassed. But years later, I kind of realized, oh, that was a real kind of fat activism statement I was making then.
Sure.
And it took me decades to realize that, I want to represent fat people and big people. And there was one time actually I was in my Vancouver show, and in Vancouver at the Beauchy, they have this really nice atrium that you can look from the top down into the gallery. And I was looking at everybody at my show, and I was just like, look at all these people, it's awesome. And I was like, wait a second, scanning the audience, I'm like, everybody's fucking fat. I'm like, everybody's big in my crowd. And I'm like, they're seeing themselves in the paintings.
Exactly.
And I was like, that's exactly what I wanted to do, but I didn't even know I was doing it. And it was just like this great moment where I was like, holy shit, that's why they're buying them. Because I started doing these ones without horses. And I was like, just these big figures and birds and stuff. And I was like, why are these people buying these things without horses? I was like, they only like the horses, I thought. But they were buying them because of the big people. And it made me sort of so like shocked and proud, and like in this way where you just want to go down and be like, all right, my people, you know what I mean? Because I was just like, I didn't realize that's why you were here, And so I really, from then on, just, came out with it, and was very
yeah.
outward.
Just proud, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and even, now that Facebook is a real forum and Instagram and all this shit,
Yeah.
I'm very outspoken about it, to a big arts community, who knows that about me.
Yeah.
And so it's important,
Yeah. I believe you have a love of Daniel Johnston.
Yeah. Well, we like when I used to go to the show called Folk Fest in Atlanta.
Okay.
Around 2010, or 9, he started showing down there too.
Right
so
on.
His sister, Margie, would come and set up his booth, and then he would come.
Yeah.
And then we'd all go outside and sort of sneak joints on the
Right.
side of the building. And Daniel was just smoking cigarettes and drinking a Mountain Dew. But he would always talk about what drugs he was on at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember me and my friend Charles Laster were out there, and Daniel was saying, "Oh, you guys got to try this new thing. It's just like weed. It's like, you won't believe it. You'll feel like you're smoking weed all day. It's the greatest thing." That was the last real memory I have of him.
He was on prescription medication.
He was on prescription meds, but they were strong.
Yeah.
And but he drank so many cans of soda every day. I swear that's what everybody knows that. But
yeah.
Anyways, he was to him, to me, he was sort of like, I don't know, a figure I identified with, because when I saw his drawing style, it made my stack of 1,000,000 drawings kind of like valid.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. And he had a certain honesty.
Well, he was. He was special soul, like an angel on earth. I don't believe in God, but he was an angel.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's cool that you met him. Yeah. So I just got a note to say we have about 10 minutes, so that's fine. Yeah.
And you guys should ask some more questions.
No, I mean you're really you're an easy interviewee because you have a lot to say, and that's amazing. Mark, do you have any?
Well, I wanted to touch again on you're up in the Sioux. You grew up in Tillsonburg. I'm familiar with Tillsonburg. Sorry, losing the light here, so I'm going into shadow. I'm sitting in my daughter's room and by the window, and there's a
sun's going down.
Weird light here. Yes, sun's going down. My in-laws are from that area. My wife grew up in Elmer, or near Elmer, Ontario, and and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law lived in Tillsonburg for a little while, and so I'm quite familiar with the region. But it is very small, right? And you are an artist, and you are. Sorry, I'm kind of blocked out by.
All right. It's all right. It's a mystery.
Yeah. It's okay. I can still.
So
you're an artist. You got to be hungry for inspiration. How do you connect? How do you connect with? So now you're up in the Sioux, and you're saying that you're really the only artist of your sort of level, maybe up there.
Well, no, there's some big artists up here.
But how do you connect? How do you connect with the art scene, with the art world? And how do you find inspiration in semi-seclusion, semi-isolation like that? And I should say also, I grew up myself in a small town, and for 18, 20 years, that's where I lived. But we were a couple hours from New York City, so we would just drive down to New York, and I would get everything I needed there. But I had to go to New York. Couldn't just sit still. So how do you connect? How do you connect with?
I mean, actually, my next series is about that kind of, because I'm drawing all the Facebook friends. Like,
I was gonna ask you to talk about the next project.
It's called Everyone I've Never Met.
Everyone I've Never Met.
It's just because I've got all these 5,000 freaking friends, and I don't know them. Like, I know you guys, obviously. But we chat sort of on Facebook, and we've become friends over the years. And then there's a whole bunch of people that I've never met. And so I'm drawing everyone, and it's in reference to a body of work I did 20 years earlier called Everyone I've Ever Met, where I literally tried to go through my memory bank and draw every person I knew from memory. And there was around 5,000 in that series too, oddly.
That's amazing.
And yeah. And so 20 years later, I'm sort of doing the same thing. And they're neat because they're just on plywood. And I use a quill pen, like with India ink, to do the drawings. And then I color them in pencil crayon. And so it's a strict medium format. So I have to only use these materials, but I have to just draw portraits and portraits and portraits. And so it's really fun. And I write a little bit about each person, like what I know about each person. Some goes along, like a couple paragraphs. Some it's just a sentence. Some it's just their name. But like, it's kind of like a precursor to Facebook in a way, like a wooden analog Facebook. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A hand-drawn Facebook.
Yeah. Like the same kind of like idea of like preserving all these people. And, you know, because on Facebook, who's on there is like your old friends. That's who all the people I know. It was like everyone I knew from school who was nice.
Yeah.
And, you know, everyone I knew from high school, everyone I knew from college. Yeah. You know, everyone I knew from Pizza Hut, everyone I knew from factory, everyone I knew from
school, you know
what I mean? Like all those generations. And so like, so now I'm drawing that, but I don't know half of these people. So that's how I connect. Like, there's a big scene in New York that I have all these New York friends, and like, and it sort of started with being friends with John Lurie, and me and John Lurie chatting a little bit, and me being super excited about it. And then like realizing that his friendship with me and him sort of like, you know, I linked up to a whole bunch of friends through his friends group and stuff, brought me to this new level of like being able to hear and see people. It was like, I could never do that even when I was in New York. Like, I lived in New York for a couple of years. So it's sort of like, that's what I do now. I go on the internet.
Yeah,
you know,
social media and the internet.
It's incredible. Like, really, like I'm sort of, I was made for that kind of like, even though I'm like a few generations older, it's like I was one of those kids when I was 16 in like 1986. My parents had to buy me a telephone for my room because I called my friends constantly. Like, I was always on the analog dial phone.
Yeah.
And so, you know, to have two lines in your house in the 80s was very like, 2 phone lines in your house? Why would you have that? You know what I mean? And they're like,
you had your own cell phone. It was just in one place.
Yeah, and it's like our son talks on the phone 24 hours a day, so we have to have it. Otherwise, no one can. And so, like, me coming into this world is like, oh, I was meant for this. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, it's great chatting with you. And, and
great talking to you, Charles.
Yeah. And
that was a lot of fun, Casey. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and we'll
I felt like I was at a bar for a minute there, just having drinks.
We'll do that for sure.
But I was the only one drinking, I guess.
All right, man. Take care, eh?
All right. Ciao for now.